Hello and welcome to JTV Instagram Live Short. I'm your host, Janette Burke, and today I'm joined by Andrea Pope. Andrea is here to talk to us about ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, and how it impacted her life. And I'm going to welcome now Andrea Pope. Andrea, thanks for joining us today. So
Thank you for
this is a
having me.
really You're really welcome. This is a very interesting topic because for you, first of all, you were known as a high-end, high-priced fashion designer, jewelry fashion designer, and everybody knew you. And you were living your whole life, and then all of a sudden, later in life, you get diagnosed with ADHD. What was that like for you?
It was a shock. The first reaction was shock. Oh
Mm-hmm.
my God, there's a word for why I'm different. The other thing then became profound regret. Why didn't I know about this sooner? That was the worst
Mm-hmm.
of it because I didn't learn about this from my doctor. I got the info from another ADHDer. And that insight from someone like me is what popped my clutch to go to the doctor and say, hello, I see this test that I just got off online, like just printed off Google. Uh, I How come you didn't figure it out? I'm still working on that one. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back a bit. So you were going through life, you were functioning fine, you had a great business, but what was happening for you? What were you noticing that, sort of made you think, well, maybe something isn't quite right, or, what would make you think that, or somebody else may bring to your attention that you in fact had the signs of ADHD? How would it have, like, would you could have lived your life, continued living your life, and you were doing fine, or were you? Like, where did you feel
Well,
was
therein,
missing?
yes, therein, you said it. Or was
Okay,
I?
so can you elaborate on it?
Yes.
How did you feel? What made you feel that, something was not right or missing or what have you?
One of the main issues with ADHD is that time doesn't operate at the same speed in my head as it does in yours or the majority of humanity. I was constantly late or miscalculating. I couldn't do a time estimate for if my life depended on it. And that was really frustrating. We're trying to give a quote for a custom made piece of jewelry. I just couldn't imagine it because the time part of my brain is a neural transmitter section that isn't talking to the rest of my brain at the same speed as everyone else's. And that's just one. That's one of the major ones that ADHDers
Mhm.
have. There's also impulsivity, making impulsive choices that maybe if my executive function had been attached, I might not have made if I'd had paused for a moment. Missing thing, the attachment where executive, emotional uh, emotions and executive function are arguing who's the dominant. And when executive function loses and my emotions take over, I will make social mistakes. ADHD is a social disability. And you can see if you have time, impulsivity, maybe a disassociative or inattentive moment, and we we as ADHDers will disconnect from the moment. Again, time. All of a sudden, we've disconnected from the environment. We'll miss social cues, or we'll miss a section of an instruction that an employer is giving. All of
Mhm.
these things are challenges. Then throw in hyperactivity. I can't sit still worth a damn.
Mhm.
Just can't sit still.
But do you think that any of this, had you known earlier, like as a child, would have made a difference? Because uh,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Okay.
Absolutely. Oh my God. The if I had known, if my parents had known, number one, I would have been in every sport that they could have stuffed me into. I probably would have been like an MMA warrior queen. I had superb hand-eye coordination,
Mm-hmm.
thinking, and aggressive because of the hyperactivity. I could have used it in that direction. I did manage to
Mm-hmm.
use hyperactivity by making jewelry, constantly using my hands. But then if I got bored, up and out, and I was jogging, and then I'd come back and make jewelry for another 8 hours.
Okay.
Would have
So
made
in that regard, what I'm hearing you say is that to some extent it may have served you well in
it.
that it gave you the creativity to go ahead and make jewelry, and you were very successful with that. So I guess there's a plus and minus or a silver lining in every situation. Do you feel that ADHD is more prominent in women than men, or
No,
does it
actually,
affect them differently?
it first of all, it does. You're absolutely correct. It affects them differently.
Uh-huh.
And it's actually technically 50-50, but in men, it's more visible. They've got testosterone to kind of push that hyperactivity. They also have just the way the male and female brains are constructed differently. So it'll show up more frequently in a visible way with men. Whereas with women, without the testosterone, we may be a little more invisible, or maybe a lot more invisible, because we're not standing out in the crowd quite so much. We might be totally looking like we're paying attention, and our brain is off
Mhm.
somewhere else, not even in the room. And yet the teacher would never know.
Okay. The teacher would not know. They would think you were just being disobedient, maybe?
No, because I wouldn't even be doing that. I'd be looking right at them, but I wouldn't be there. I'd be thinking about something else because I already read the book and I already know most of what she was going to say. And now I'm bored. So I'm daydreaming.
Hmm.
I'm somewhere else. That's a classic
Hmm.
symptom for ADHD women as children, for
Hmm.
example. So it doesn't show up the same way, but it is about 50-50. And it is
Hmm.
genetic.
Okay, so in your business now, which is you're more of an advocate, educator, what do you see happening, and what would you like to see happening in schools or in organizations to sort of correct the barriers, the societal barriers, the other barriers that exist for people who have ADHD, and I, to a certain extent, would say that maybe this is a bit of a hidden disability or a hidden illness, not easily recognizable. So, what do you want to see have come out of it? What kind of a difference are you trying to make with the organization, with your business?
The vast connection, the reason why I created the concept of local social groups is because ADHDers need to find each other. We can see each other, and it's having people like yourself to connect with is really important. People who get you. That's a super important thing. So that's my end goal. But my front end goal is to get the test out. If I had seen that test at any point in my life, I would have known immediately that I had ADHD. It's one page, 18 questions, multiple choice. How much more simple can it get? Not much more simple. It's just a matter of getting it out. And I'm looking at going guerrilla to get that test into people's hands easily, into their email
Okay,
box.
so you mentioned you could get it even off of Google, right? So if
Exactly.
you think let's just talk about some of the symptoms that if you think you might be suffering from ADHD and you want that test, you could go Google it. What would be some of the symptoms that you would sort of recognize in yourself to make you want to take that test?
For example, hyperactivity in me comes out in talking a lot. Notice it's hard for me not to interrupt you. That is an ADHD symptom. The constant jumping in. All right, that's hyperactive. The fidgeting. constantly fidgeting with feet, hands, toes tapping. That's a symptom. Hyper gregarious is also, quotation marks, a symptom. The fact that ADHDers are 6 times more likely to become entrepreneurs could be considered a symptom. However, it's one of the more positive symptoms. You meet an entrepreneur, you listen for it. That's an example. Bleeping out while listening to people. So I'm talking to you, and all of a sudden my brain catches on to something you say, and it makes a right angle turn. And now I'm not even in the room. That's a major symptom. There's 18 of them, and there's multiple different combinations and multiple levels of it. Each one of us who have ADHD has a different combo deal. And then you throw in personality. We're basically one of a kinders. Mother Nature has created these neurotransmitter differences as kind of throwing in wild cards into humanity. If you've always known you're different. Oh, and here's one. How about the DEFCON 1 temper? Now that's one to deal with, where there's no pause. You something comes at you, and the fight or flight kicks in. Oof, you're either attacking right back instantly, just out of the mouth, or you're running away. You're going into avoidant mode, pleaser mode, masking completely, and who you are authentically disappears. And that's
okay.
Right.
So it sounds like it may also, some of these symptoms or signs could also be signs of anxiety as well, right? They some of them are. I mean, the last few that you just mentioned. But as I said at the top of this interview, it's also served you, right? You were saying that it fueled your creativity, and that, we see this in many entrepreneurs, and maybe that's why they're entrepreneurs, because they need to follow their own beat, as opposed to, maybe they're not the most idealistic employees, because they can't follow a set, whereas when you're in self-employed, you get to make your own rules, you get to make your own timeline, you get to decide who you're working with, who you're not working with, you're not taking orders from anyone but yourself. Is there any truth to that? Is that why you think that maybe they choose the path of self-employment over being an employee?
You're absolutely correct. It's no fun getting fired. I met a woman when I very first found out about ADHD and started going to support groups, live support groups, who told me she had been fired 40 or 50 times in her life. 40 or 50 times. Can you imagine? You'd think a person would feel anxious and depressed if that was happening to you and you could not control the thing that was getting you fired. Yeah,
So what can we do, though, to help combat some of the symptoms? Is there anything that can be done?
There are two separate things. One is medication. In other words, part of what's going on in the ADHD brain is a misappropriation or lack of chemicals or chemical pathways. And some of those can be replaced. And fortunately, ADHD is one of the mental conditions which the drug industry has the most success with in multiple forms of approaches in chemicals that way they can apply to us. We're really, really easy to treat. 85% of us can find something from in the medical drug area. But there's one far more important area, in my opinion, based on my own experience, and that's social emotional education. And that's one of the things that I'm really focusing the vast connection on, is the social.
Okay, so let's delve into that a little bit more. What does that look like for you? How are you focusing on it? And what is it that we can do with the social communication? Letting people know that this is what we have going on. Like, what are your recommendations?
Where I'm going with it is, first, you have to learn what your flavor of ADHD is. And how does that combine with your personality? That's a number one thing. Figure out what vehicle you're driving, because it's not going to be like the next person or the other ADHDer that's sitting right beside you in the support group or online. You got to know what you are constructed for, what your best strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and how to deal with them. We need to have social behaviors deconstructed for us and then start practicing behaviors. Like, what do I say when? Because there's lots of situations where I can't remember. I made that mistake before and I didn't learn how to get it right, because most of the time people just tell you you got it wrong and walk away, or don't even say, they just ghost you. They don't tell you how to get it right. So we need our own group of people to practice with. And part of the vast connection is going to be socialization practice, i.e., throwing parties with each other and doing conversations live and practicing. And then as we practice with each other, the more sophisticated, more trained ADHDers can help the newbies get their feet leveled out socially. I did that. I paid for a social emotional education way 15 years before I found out, that I had ADHD, and it upped my social game 30%. 30% without even knowing I had ADHD.
So what about people who don't have ADHD but are around people who do have it? What can they do to support you?
This is a challenging position for people who love us, because on one hand, the support is sometimes just not getting angry with us for not managing time. That one's a big one. Or forgetting. Memory issues are also an ADHD problem, very consistently an ADHD issue. Not being angry with us and telling us how to get it right, or helping us hack the problem. So our telephones are our best hacks for things like setting alarms, having assistance with, have you got the checklist, helping us with the checklist to get out the door so we don't forget something really important, like the passport before the airport. That would be really crappy to miss. These are the kinds of assist, but it's always going to be on the helping us with the things that are the most challenging for us. Because if the neurotransmitter isn't there, I can't make it work. If there isn't a chemical connection, I'm just going to need.
Well, I guess you also need the understanding, right? The people who are understanding, and that means you have to express to them that you have this. Otherwise, I would think, and you can comment on this, that it would be troublesome in relationships. That it could cause, ADHD could be troublesome in relationships. It may be problematic to be in relationship with somebody who has it if they don't express it and don't share that they need, these reminders or help or understanding around it.
Which is going right back to what I said. You've got to know yourself before you can tell someone else how to help you. That is critical. That is an absolute critical thing, because you can't tell somebody what you don't know. That's why building a course just for self-discovery is part of the program. It doesn't matter who you are. You've got to know what vehicle you're driving for other people.
Okay, so we're nearing the end of the interview. We're running a little bit short on time. So I want to give you a chance to mention your website so people can go learn more about what you're doing and the courses and everything else that you're doing to get the message out and help people with ADHD. What is your website?
The website's called The Vast Connection, VAST is VAST, Variable Attention Stimulus Trait, or VAST, like there are 800 million of us,
Mm-hmm.
thevastconnection.com. And the first
Okay, so guys, that link will be shown in the show notes below. You can find it.
Okay.
You've given it to us, so it's Fast Connection, and it sounds very interesting. And I just want to conclude with some positive hope for people who have, who might even be afraid to say, I have this, or they're being misunderstood because their actions are in line with having it and people don't understand. Can you give them sort of one tip about what they could do today to help their situation so they don't get fired or they don't lose a relationship or something like that? Can you share one tip?
Very, very first thing, do the test. The website takes you straight to the test. You push the button and you download it. Nobody has to know. Find out if you've got it. That's the number one step. If you don't fill out the test, you can't know what's going on for you and if it is ADHD. And you're looking at 8 to 9 in the gray square boxes of a multiple choice test. One single page. It takes about 6 minutes to do. That's it. Do that first. Then start looking for other ADHDers online. There are many support groups everywhere in the world. Connect with other ADHDers. Do the test, connect with other ADHDers. That's the very, very first step to healing ADHD.
Okay, I'm afraid we're out of time. So I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing all this great information with us. And I want to thank my audience for joining us today. JTV Instagram Live short is available every Wednesday by following me on Instagram. That link is also below. We feature a variety of book authors, speakers, coaches, consultants, and small business owners with very impactful information on lifestyle issues to benefit you. So we hope that we'll see you again. And thanks for being with us one more time.
Thank you very much.
This is Janette Burke. You're welcome. This is Janette Burke, your host, signing off.